Good afternoon and welcome to the last panel 4 on addressing organized crime in the context of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, promising criminal justice practices in Germany and worldwide. Today, we are honored to have Madame Sigma Huda, the former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, here with us to moderate the panel, as well as voices from Interpol, Germany, Nigeria, Austria, and Spain. Madame Huda, I am happy to hand over the panel to you.
Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome to everybody, all the participants. It's late evening at our place in Bangladesh, Dhaka, and I suppose somewhere it's evening, somewhere it's afternoon. So whatever the time zone that you are in, I would like to say good evening to you all. And I welcome you to this panel 4 of this ongoing webinar that has been organized by the OSCE and by the German Alliance Together Against Human Trafficking and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. It's a very, I'm very honored that I have been considered to be the moderator for this panel. This is a very important panel because we are going to talk about promising criminal justice practices. Promising criminal justice practices. It's a very, very important topic. Because how do you promise criminal justice system unless it's a concerted effort? And I think this is the crux of preventing organized crimes from happening. So I would like to, first of all, to tell you something about our organizers. Together Against Human Trafficking is an association of 37 not-for-profit organizations, as well as initiatives and individuals involved in the fight against human trafficking. Member organizations of the Alliance are engaged in the areas of prevention, training, victim protection, and victim assistance. Through outreach work, they identify trafficked persons, support women who want to exit prostitution or escape situations of sexual exploitation. They run shelters, specialized counseling centers, and employment opportunities. Together Against Human Trafficking is engaged in awareness raising, education and prevention in Germany, as well as in the countries of origin. The Alliance furthermore works to improve the national legal framework in Germany by supporting measures that address impunity of traffickers, as well as victim protection and compensation. The next organizer that has helped set up this conference, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, is a political foundation in Germany. 16 regional offices offer a wide variety of civic education conferences and events. Their offices abroad are in charge of over 200 projects in more than 120 countries. The foundation's headquarters are situated in St. Augustine near Bonn and also in Berlin. There, an additional conference center named the Academy was opened in 1998. At home as well as abroad, their civic education programs aim at promoting freedom and liberty, peace and justice. They focus on consolidating democracy, the unification of Europe, and the strengthening of transatlantic relations, as well as on development cooperation. As a think tank and consulting agency, their soundly researched scientific fundamental concepts and current analysis are meant to offer basis for possible political action. The Berlin Academy is the national forum of dialogue between the spheres of politics, economics, science, and society. The third organizer at this conference is OSCE, which is the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. They have been active in preventing and combating trafficking in human beings in the OSCE region since 1999. Since that time, it has focused on the promotion of international human rights standards and gender-sensitive measures in responses to trafficking. As a result of its work, the ODHR has developed expertise and a significant role in the domain of victim protection and the promotion of the rights of trafficked persons and groups who are at risk. In particular, ODIHR has assisted participating states in the creation of a national referral mechanisms, NRMS, drawing on guidance provided in ODIHR's national referral mechanisms, joining efforts to protect the rights of trafficked persons. This handbook has paved the way in promoting trafficked persons' access to justice and effective remedies, including compensation. And a little bit about myself now. I'm the moderator for this panel. My name is Sigma Huda. I'm a Bangladeshi lawyer who has served as the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, from 2004 to 2008. I am the founder and former president of the Bangladesh Women Lawyers Association and the founder secretary of the Institute for Law and Development. I am the co-founder and current chairman of Bangladesh Society for the Enforcement of Human Rights. In Bangladesh, I have set up about 28 organizations, co-founded or founded or even assisted in founding. I fought against trafficking and sexual exploitation, particularly of women and girls, from Bangladesh to India and other countries of the Middle East, even the camel jockeys. Sigma has to accredit many public issues in litigation, resulting in landmark decisions affecting the status of women and minority issues. This Office of the Special Rapporteur, just to give a little background, was created with the adoption of Resolution 2410, by which it decided to appoint a Special Rapporteur for a 3-year period on trafficking in persons, to focus on the human rights aspects of the victims of trafficking in persons. And I think this mandate is a very important factor in trying to prevent trafficking and cooperating with the agencies, national agencies who are combating organized crimes, and especially in the sphere of trafficking. We have, I think, the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons is very, very important, because we do country reports, we take country visits, we make reports, we look at the latches in the countries that we have visited, and so these reports and all are assisting the organized crime and the organization that deals with all this kind of crimes. So now we are now holding this very important panel. I think every panel is important, but this is more because we're talking of the legislation, we're talking of the mechanisms, we're talking of how we are going about providing or promoting criminal justice to the giving criminal justice practices, and what are these practices, which are the best practices worldwide as well as in Germany. So we will be holding discussions on 5 ways to curtail this heinous crime. A, measures to enhance the investigation of organized crime related to human trafficking and the methods to improve victim identification rates, especially through proactive investigations. B, strengthening the control of cybercrime and financial investigations related to human trafficking. C, the role of cross-border cooperation among the criminal justice actors, especially the law enforcement. It's very, very important. D, the importance of a victim-centered, gender-sensitive, and trauma-informed approach to the investigation of organized crime and the promising practices by law enforcement worldwide. And before I go on to talk about the speakers, I would like to just state here that whilst we discuss this panel, if you have any questions and answers that you would like us to respond to, then you can go to the function where it is written the question and answer and pose your question there. And if you want to add a speaker, then please add the name of the speaker too that you would like the person to address. And then at the end of the panel, at the end of the presentations, we will have a little half-an-hour session on question and answer. And I hope that should be, I hope you all will appreciate, and you will accordingly work like that. The eminent panel 4 speakers are before us today is Helmut Sporer, former Detective Chief Superintendent, Augsburg, Germany. He is a retired Detective Chief Superintendent since 2020. Prior to that, he worked for 30 years for the criminal police in Augsburg, where he was in charge of human trafficking and monitoring prostitution for about 25 years, both as a case officer and later for many years as the head of a specialized police unit. He has served as an expert on human trafficking in committees of the German Bundestag on several occasions. And the next speaker on the panel would be Mrs. Inocentia G. Apruvo Montero, coordinator of the Trafficking in Human Beings Unit within the Interpol, who is an international senior expert in countering trafficking in human beings and child exploitation. She is also an expert in gender-based violence. Chief Superintendent of Police from the Republic of Benin, she is the former director of the Anti-Human Trafficking and Child Protection Unit in Berlin. She holds 2 masters in international criminal law and international law of human rights. With more than 10 years experience in working on trafficking in human beings and child exploitation, she conducted several national, regional, and international investigations and operations on this crime area, from which many victims were rescued from sexual exploitation and several suspected traffickers arrested. Next is Mr. Bashir Garba Lado, Director. I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly all your names, and I hope you will. I apologize if there's a little slip in the pronouncement. Bashir Garba Lado, Director General, National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, Nigeria. He was appointed in May 2021, this year, by the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari as the General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. He is a Nigerian businessman who was elected Senator for the Kano Central Constituency of Kano State, Nigeria in April 2011 national elections. He's running on the People's Democratic Party platform. Bashir Garba Muhammad founded the Ladon Al-Heri Foundation, a charity that funds projects including schools and water boreholes. We have with us Mr. George Adrian Petrescu in ITP Romania, who was appointed in April 2019 as Deputy Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons within the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The agency evaluates and monitors the activities developed by public institutions and non-governmental organizations in the fight against trafficking in persons, fulfilling the role of a national rapporteur as set out in the Directive 2001-36 on preventing and combating trafficking in human beings and protecting its victims. Mr. Petrescu graduated from Bucharest University with a bachelor degree in philosophy, has a master degree in countering organized crime from Police Academy, Alexandru Lon Cuza, and graduate FBI National Academy Program for Criminal Justice at the University of Virginia. For over a decade, he had various management positions within the Romanian Police, General Directorate for Countering Organized Crime, Head of Resource Center on Trafficking in Human Beings and People Smuggling, Chief of Countering Trafficking in Persons Unit, etc., and the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, Chief of Monitoring, Evaluation, and the Trafficking in Human Beings Victim Coordination Unit. In his capacity, he was involved in several researches, studies, and reports in the field of human rights and human trafficking. At the same time, he coordinated the elaboration and implementation at national level of numerous projects and standard procedures for anti-trafficking units and victim assistance. In the end, the last speaker will be Mr. Jose Luis Perez Fernandez, Inspector UCRIF, Central Commissariat General Extranjería y Fronteras, Spain, who became a police inspector of the Cuerpo Nacional de Policía in 2008 and has more than 10 years of experience in the field of combating trafficking in human beings and international cooperation. In his anti-trafficking work, he has carried out investigations that have required the cooperation of many different countries all around Europe and also around the world. Moreover, he is a part of several expert groups focusing, amongst others, on Etutu from Nigeria and Chinese victims of trafficking, including in the framework of the European Multidisciplinary Platform Against Crime Threats. He is also an integral part of ODIHR's National Referral Mechanism Advisory Group nowadays. Mr. Perez Fernandez is the liaison officer of the Cuerpo Nacional de Policía in the State Prosecution Office with the purpose of coordinating all the trafficking in human being cases in Spain. I would like to give you a little information that this panel will be held in English and German, and we offer interpretation into German and English. You can select the appropriate channel by using the interpretation function marked with the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom application. To give you a little background that why this today's topic is so very important is that if you really want to prevent and if you really want to create prevention strategies and develop exit strategies from situations of sexual exploitation or prostitution or trafficking, then they'll have to work together, and they have to, because the member states who are parties to CEDAW or the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, are under a direct and binding obligation to suppress all forms of exploitation of the prostitution of others under Article 6 of the CEDAW. In addition, the UN CEDAW General Recommendation number 38 on trafficking women and girls in the context of global migration affirms as a priority duty of states, both individually and collectively, to prevent women and girls from exposure to risk of being trafficked. States are also obliged to discourage the demand that fosters exploitation and leads to trafficking. And it sets out also practical guidances. Furthermore, the Palermo Protocol, Article 9.5 also states that the state parties shall adopt or strengthen legislative or other measures, such as educational, social, or cultural measures, including through bilateral and multilateral cooperation, to discourage the demand that fosters all forms of exploitation of persons, especially women and children, that leads to trafficking. Therefore, these multi-agency stakeholders have to come together to find common understandings and agreement policies and legal approaches in order to create systems of anti-trafficking work that can be followed in a variety of national contexts, including Germany. Against this backdrop, the Alliance Together Against Human Trafficking has been organizing regular conferences. And currently, strategies for combating trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation as an interlinkage with prostitution are being rediscussed in Germany, also from the perspective of gender equality. So this conference will therefore focus on re-examining the German legal and policy approaches in these areas, highlighting international perspectives and best practices. So we will be we'll produce a set of recommendations on addressing the human trafficking and the best sustainable and long-term policy solutions, strengthening of national legal frameworks, civil society innovative approaches, addressing emerging trends and challenges, and promising criminal justice approaches. And these promising criminal justice approaches will have to be in a unified manner. That's what I feel. So now I would like to request our first speaker, Mr. I would like to ask Mr. Sporer, the former Detective Chief Superintendent, Ausbeutung, Germany, to speak on this panel. Mr. Helmut Sporer, please.
Guten Tag zusammen und Frau Huda, vielen Dank für die freundliche Vorstellung. Es ist mir eine Ehre und ich freue mich, hier zu Ihnen sprechen zu dürfen. Ich werde es auf Deutsch machen, damit der Fokus meiner Ausführungen auch im Vordergrund steht. Ich möchte zum Thema organisierte Kriminalität und Menschenhandel aus meiner eigenen Ermittlungsarbeit berichten. Ich komme, wie Frau Huda schon erklärt hat, aus Augsburg. Das ist eine Stadt in Süddeutschland, im Großraum von München. Der Ballungsraum Augsburg, zu Ihrem Verständnis, umfasst etwa 1,5 Million Menschen. Zum Thema selbst. Ich möchte zunächst über die Lage in Deutschland berichten. Das ist vielleicht gerade für Teilnehmer, die aus anderen Ländern kommen, interessant, hier noch etwas zu erfahren. Deutschland hat vielleicht das liberalste Prostitutionsrecht der ganzen Welt. Und geschätzt sind in Deutschland etwa 250.000 bis 300.000 Prostituierte tätig. Genau weiß das niemand. Die meisten, über 90%, kommen aus dem Ausland, vornehmlich aus Südosteuropa. Hier sind die Länder Ungarn, Bulgarien und Rumänien am meisten betroffen, sage ich. Aber auch die Frauen kommen auch aus Afrika, besonders aus Nigeria und aus Asien. Viele von diesen Frauen erfüllen die typischen Opferkriterien. Man erkennt, dass die Frauen nicht selbstständig da sind, aber sie bleiben behördlich in aller Regel unerkannt, weil die Beweisführung, die Aussage der Frau in aller Regel fehlt. Darüber wird in Deutschland viel diskutiert und man hört immer wieder folgende Aussage in der Diskussion. Es gibt natürlich Menschenhandel in Deutschland. Die reguläre Prostitution in den Bordellen hat damit aber nichts zu tun. Sie darf mit Menschenhandel nicht in Zusammenhang gebracht werden. Der Menschenhandel findet im Dunkelfeld statt. Soweit diese oft zitierte Aussage. Und diese Darstellung wird vorrangig von Vertretern der Prostitutionslobby gebraucht. Aber leider vertreten auch Teile der Politik in Deutschland diese Ansicht. Ich kann aus meiner eigenen langjährigen Erfahrung sagen, diese Darstellung ist falsch. Genau das Gegenteil ist der Fall. Prostitution und Menschenhandel sind in den meisten Fällen untrennbar verbunden. Warum ist das so? Wenn Sie zum Beispiel auf die großen Bordelle, Laufhäuser, FKK-Clubs in Deutschland schauen, sie sind wie Warenhäuser mit bis zu 70 Frauen, die dort anwesend sind. Und sie haben ein erfolgreiches Konzept. Sie werden mit der Garantie, dass ständig 30 oder 40 Girls, so der Slogan, zur Auswahl zur Verfügung stehen. Das macht das Bordell für Freier attraktiv. Doch woher kommen diese Frauen? Und warum kann die ständige große Anzahl dieser Frauen garantiert werden? Und warum sind diese Frauen, oftmals auch junge Mädchen ab 18 Jahre, bereit, bis zu 15 Stunden zur Verfügung zu stehen, vorgegebene Preise, Hausregeln, Bekleidungsvorschriften oder besser Nacktgebote zu akzeptieren? Das ist nur möglich, wenn man Verbindungen zu Schleusern und Menschenhändlern hat, zu Quellen, die organisierten Nachschub gewährleisten können. Ich möchte dazu kurz und beispielhaft 2 Ermittlungsverfahren aus meiner eigenen Praxis darstellen, um zu erläutern, wie das System in aller Regel funktioniert. Wir haben in Augsburg verdeckte Ermittlungen geführt und Folgendes festgestellt. Ein großes Bordell in Augsburg mit rund 40 Prostituierten bestellte bei einem professionellen Großhändler aus Südosteuropa regelmäßig Frauen, wie im Katalog, nach bestimmter Konfektionsgröße. Die Konfektionsgröße 32 und 34 war hier am meisten begehrt, nach Haarfarbe, nach Alter und anderen körperlichen Merkmalen. Und der Großhändler belieferte die Frauen pünktlich und wunschgemäß und sogar mit Umtauschgarantie. Dieser Großhändler arbeitete zusammen mit mehreren Anwerbern in Ungarn und in Rumänien. Die waren darauf spezialisiert, Mädchen, naive Mädchen, junge Mädchen, allerregel Mädchen ohne soziale Bindungen anzuwerben, und so belieferten sie diesen Großhändler. Das war organisierte Kriminalität in Reinkultur, arbeitsteilig auf 3 Ebenen verteilt. Jeder machte seinen Gewinn, ein geschlossenes System. Von außen aber war dieses Bordell sauber, es hat eine absolut saubere Fassade. Wir konnten in diesem konkreten Fall etwa 10 Verdächtige überführen und vor allem auch den Manager des Bordells. Das ist immer schwierig und besonders schwierig und auch selten, und das war besonders wichtig. Sie wurden alle zu Haftstrafen verurteilt. Den zweiten Fall, den ich kurz darstellen möchte, kennen Sie vielleicht. Es geht um das große Bordell Paradise in Stuttgart. Es hatte ebenso eine saubere Fassade und galt lange Zeit als Vorzeigebordell mit sozialen Einrichtungen für die Frauen. Das versicherten die Chefs der Bordells. Sie waren früher oft in TV-Talkshows zu sehen, zu Gast, und berichteten über ihre Arbeit. Sehr positiv natürlich. Es gelang uns aber in Augsburg, verdeckte Ermittlungen einzuleiten, und was wir hier feststellten, übertraf unsere Befürchtungen bei weitem. Hinter dieser Fassade gab es schwerste Kriminalität gegenüber den Frauen und eine Kooperation mit Rockern, Hells Angels zum Beispiel, und Menschenhändlern. Ein großer Lieferant für die Frauen, er war aus Rumänien, wohnte teilweise sogar im Bordell selbst. Wir gaben die Ermittlungen schließlich nach Stuttgart ab, weil dort der örtliche Schwerpunkt lag. Das dortige Landeskriminalamt und die Staatsanwaltschaft dort ermittelten hervorragend weiter, und deshalb konnten hier nicht nur die unmittelbaren Täter, also die Zuhälter und die Menschenhandler, verurteilt werden, sondern auch die 4 Bordellchefs. Bemerkenswert die Aussage des ersten Bordellchefs: In seinem umfassenden Geständnis betonte er, dass die Zusammenarbeit mit den Menschenhändlern für den Erfolg des Bordells sehr, sehr wichtig war. Leider sind solche Erfolge nur selten. Diese Ermittlungen kosten unglaublich viel Zeit, Personal und Geld. Es muss ein geschlossenes, subversives System durchbrochen werden. Diese Manpower können Polizei und Staatsanwaltschaft und Gericht nicht oft leisten. Prostituierte, Zuhälter und Bordellbetreiber stehen in einer besonderen Dreiecksbeziehung. Ich habe dazu ein Anschauungs- und Erklärungsmodell entwickelt. Das würde aber hier den Rahmen sprengen und deshalb belasse ich es bei dieser Bemerkung. Nun zur Frage, wie ist diese intelligente, organisierte Kriminalität zu bekämpfen? Das beginnt eigentlich schon lange vor den eigentlichen Ermittlungen. Man muss die Zusammenhänge und Verhältnisse, die Lage im Prostitutionsmilieu kennen. Wichtig sind präventive, proaktive Aktionen wie intensive Routinekontrollen und der Versuch, mit den Frauen möglichst viel Kontakt zu haben. Dazu eine ständige verdeckte Informationsbeschaffung. Wichtig sind auch spezialisierte Ermittler bei der Polizei und bei der Staatsanwaltschaft, die wissen, um was es geht, die entsprechende Erfahrung haben. Gibt es dann konkrete Ermittlungen, ist eine interne Abschottung unverzichtbar, genauso wie umfangreiche verdeckte Maßnahmen wie Kommunikationsüberwachung, Observation, verdeckte Ermittler und so weiter. Und die Beweisführung ist davon abhängig. Dazu muss ein sicherer Informationsaustausch mit den Behörden in den Heimatländern der Opfer und der Täter stattfinden. Das größte Problem allerdings ist, dass die Frauen oft Angst haben, die Wahrheit zu erzählen, wenn sie von der Polizei befragt werden. Da sind fachkundige Vernehmungsbeamte wichtig. Wir machen immer die Erfahrung, wenn die Frauen dann wissen, dass die Täter festgenommen sind, dass sie in Haft sind, dann erleichtert ihnen das die Hemmschwelle, ihre wahre Leidensgeschichte zu erzählen. Und je mehr man im Vorfeld ermittelt hat und darüber die Sachverhalte Bescheid weiß, desto leichter ist es auch, dass die Frauen etwas erzählen. Wenn dies gesichert ist und auch die Opferanwälte, Opferschutzwohnungen und die Betreuung bei Gericht und eine Zusammenarbeit mit geeigneten Opferschutzorganisationen da ist, dann enden die Ermittlungen meist auch erfolgreich. Leider auch relativ selten, viel zu oft müssen Ermittlungen eingestellt werden. Die vergangenen 10 Jahre hat sich viel gebessert in diesem Bereich. Zum Beispiel wurden gute Kontakte zu Spezialdienststellen in den Heimatländern der Täter und Opfer, vor allem in Südosteuropa, aufgebaut. Mittlerweile haben sich auch Opfervernehmungen per Video im Heimatland bewährt. Oder die Auslieferung der Täter funktioniert in aller Regel mittlerweile reibungslos. Dazu gibt es Chit-Verfahren oder Euro-Use und dergleichen. Sie kennen das und das hat eine gute Wirkung. Aber trotzdem, trotz dieser guten Fortschritte, werden das Grundproblem, der massenhafte Menschenhandel, damit nicht umfassend in den Griff zu bekommen sein. Das Gefüge Prostitution und Menschenhandel ist so vielschichtig mit so vielen unterschiedlichen Faktoren und deshalb so kompliziert. Ich sehe für die Zukunft folgende Ansätze. Man muss unterscheiden, wir haben starre Faktoren, die sind nur nicht oder nur schwer zu ändern. Dazu zählen der schier unerschöpfliche Nachschub an jungen Frauen, den künftigen Opfern, besonders aus Südosteuropa. Das ist innerhalb der EU wegen des Rechts auf Freizügigkeit nur schwer zu beeinflussen. Dann das Wohlstandsgefälle zwischen den Liefer- und den Abnehmerländern. Dann weiter die emotionale Manipulation zur späteren Ausbeutung. Jetzt nennt man es Loverboy-Methode, aber im Prinzip gibt es diese Manipulation schon ewig. Die kann durch Aufklärung zwar gemindert, aber nicht gänzlich eliminiert werden. Und nicht zu vergessen, die Personalkapazitäten bei den Behörden, bei Polizei, Staatsanwaltschaft und Gerichten sind nicht beliebig erweiterbar. OK und Menschenhandel sind typische Kontrolldelikte. Und nur wenn ausreichend personelle, finanzielle und zeitliche Ressourcen investiert werden, gibt es auch gute Ergebnisse. Neben den starren Faktoren gibt es auch flexible Faktoren und die können wir beeinflussen, um die Ergebnisse zu verbessern. Dazu zählen: Wir müssen erreichen, dass Deutschland und die anderen Abnehmerländer für die Profiteure von Menschenhandel als Zielland unattraktiver werden. Und das kann man mit verschiedenen Maßnahmen erreichen. Zum Beispiel die Anzahl der Abstellmöglichkeiten für Frauen, also der Prostitutionsstätten, der Plätze und die Bordelle, reduzieren. Das reduziert auch gleichzeitig die Opferzahlen, die Lage wird übersichtlicher und die Ermittlungen kann man dann besser führen. Dann eine bessere Vermögensabschöpfung. Gewinnmaximierung ist die Triebfeder der Täter. Die Gewinne reduzieren, zum Beispiel auch in Deutschland durch die Wohnungsgeber, durch die Bordellbetreiber, die Wuchermieten verbieten. Und die Regularien, die gesetzlichen Regularien optimieren, sowohl im Strafrecht wie auch im Prostitutionswesen. Zum Beispiel die Altersgrenze 21 oder das Verbot der Straßenprostitution. Eine noch bessere internationale Zusammenarbeit oder zum Beispiel bei Rechtshilfeersuchen. Eine Harmonisierung der Tatbestände innerhalb der EU, noch intensivere Kontrollmöglichkeiten, dann kann man auch mehr Opfer als bisher identifizieren. Ein Schwerpunkt der Defizite. Momentan bleiben leider die meisten von ihnen behördlich unerkannt. Und eine bessere Einstiegsverhinderung in die Prostitution, das ist genauso wichtig wie Ausstiegshilfen. Seriöse Studien zufolge, zum Beispiel der Universität Heidelberg, fördert eine liberale Prostitutionsgesetzgebung den Menschenhandel. Das sollte man immer bedenken. Es gilt nun, daraus eine intelligente Strategie zu entwickeln. Zentraler Aspekt muss, wie gesagt, die Reduzierung der Bordelle und der Prostitutionsstätten sein. Und wichtig ist auch die Bestrafung von Freiern. Die Sexkäufer fordern immer mehr und immer jüngere Frauen. Das ist ein ganz wichtiger Faktor in dem Gefüge. Und zufällig heute wird im Deutschen Bundestag in Berlin ein neues Gesetz verabschiedet, das die Bestrafung der Freier verschärft. Das ist ein guter Schritt und ich hoffe, es folgen weitere gute Schritte. Vielen Dank.
Thank you again, Mr. Helmut Sporer, for your very valuable input and the strategies that you've put forward, the approaches that you've detailed out, and the impact. And also I would like to congratulate Germany for having passed today this law on tightening the demand question, and your recommendations of reducing the number of brothels. Of course, I have a question there. When you want to reduce the number of brothels, it would mean more people will be going out on the streets because they will be unidentified and untraceable then. They'll just get lost to the streets and you'll have a hard time trying, even if you try to tighten laws relating to street walkers, street prostitutes, you'll still have a lot of difficulties in controlling it. So I would like to again thank you, Mr. Sporer, for this very valuable discussions, and I hope questions would come up from there. Thank you so much. I would like to next call upon the next speaker, Mrs. Inocentia G. Apovo Montero. Is she here? And so I would like to hear her too. Thank you. And welcome, Mrs. Inocentia G. Apovo Montero.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me, madam?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to be part of this discussion, this session that I found very fruitful, very productive, a lot of information ongoing, and that is definitely what we need to strengthen our ability and capacities to better fight this heinous phenomenon around the world. First of all, I would like to thank very much the organizer and all the partners involved in this. And it is a great pleasure for me to speak on behalf of Interpol. I'm currently the coordinator of the Human Trafficking Unit at Interpol. So when it comes to talk about human trafficking, I want to start saying that it is a transnational crime, a very complex crime that affects most of the countries, most of the region in the world. So this affects also most of the people, mainly the vulnerable people, this regardless of their race, their origin, their sex, and everything, So we are all vulnerable to human trafficking. It is also a type of organized crime that violates or generates a massive human rights violation. So that's why it is definitely crucial for all of us to focus on this phenomenon and try to put it out from our society. I would also like to emphasize that human trafficking is a sort of crime that has a lot of ramification, a lot nexus with others, transnational and organized crime, such as smuggling of migrants, money laundering, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, terrorism, for instance, child exploitation, environmental crime, and others. This is a crime that has diverse ramification, a lot of ramification with this others transnational crime. What does it really mean? It means that when you want to combat human trafficking, you really need to adopt, an holistic approach, not only focusing on the crime, but also on the others organized crime that it could have a ramification with. This poses a lot of challenges, to us as law enforcement, police officers and even judiciary actors, because when you are not really specialized in this domain, when you are not aware that this crime can have a ramification with others organized crime, you may not succeed your investigation, and the immediate consequence is that you will leave the victim in their pain, and then you will allow perpetrators to run away. And that's where Interpol stands in, because our mission is to facilitate the cooperation among our member countries in order to allow them, to combat transnational and organized crime in general, and particularly human trafficking and the related crime. So our mission, we really facilitate this cooperation. We really support our member countries to share time, to share data, to cooperate, in a way not to allow the perpetrators to run away. So by doing that, Interpol has developed and make available a large range of policies and capabilities that each member countries are using, on a daily basis. I can, for instance, mention our notices, our databases that allow our member countries to effectively phenomenon. I can give a simple example of one of our notices that we usually recommend to the member country. It is the purple notice that allow member countries to share information on a specific modus operandi. And recently, we have received a lot of requests related to the use of Airbnb in sexual abuse of the victim. A lot of requests also related to the modus operandi of the way that they pack victim on the tank and transport them from one point to another point. So these are the kind of modus operandi that need to be shared, in a very real time. The most popular notice that all people around the world are aware with is the red notice. The red notice, that is the one issued against a wanted person, particularly in the framework of this meeting, I would say the fugitive traffickers. So how we track them, Interpol tried to organize some operation technical and investigative support to the member countries in order for them to track and arrest, to locate also these traffickers that are running away. So that allows us to end impunity and provide justice to the victim. And that's definitely how we can end up, we can contribute to end up this phenomenon. And when it comes to the sexual exploitation, this is the most serious part of human trafficking because it's affecting a large community around the world. It is the lowest risk. It has the lowest risk, because difficult to identify, because also the victim are keeping silent, they are not speaking out, and also most lucrative activity. So this sexual exploitation, it also affects all the region. During my mission at Interpol and through our operation, I experienced a lot of cases. I work on a lot of cases related to the girl from East Africa, from West Africa, from Eastern Europe, from all over the world, from South Africa, from Asia. And then after these cases, and as I work with the countries, I noticed that there is something missing. There is some proactive action missing, So from my perspective and from Interpol perspective also, we try to encourage our member countries to invest and develop a lot of proactive action to avoid these vulnerable girls to fail, into the hand of the criminal gang. So when it comes to the law enforcement, for instance, what are we providing in terms of proactive action is to train them. So Interpol provide a lot of large range of capacity building activities, ranging from the basic training to the trainer, and even to some specialized training. For instance, in 2019, we support the member countries from the Balkan region for some capacity building activities. And one of the key requests of the countries there was training on the impact of internet, online investigation and financial investigation. So very quickly, we adapted our agenda, and then we brought on board the specialist, the person with this kind of abilities from our specialized internal unit at Interpol, and we provide this kind of training, but what is lacking is that the number of persons that we train is not the number of persons that should be trained. So we need more training. We need to keep training law enforcement, and particularly the judiciary actors that are key to end up impunity. We definitely need to involve them to all that we are doing. And that's what we experience in the Balkan region. And even during one of our projects in the Sahel region, we try to associate from the beginning all the judges and the prosecutors operating in this region. So they were part of all our training session from the beginning to the end, from the basic training to the train-the-trainer session. So at the end of the project, when we decide together with them to go to an operation and dismantle the criminal group, they were all motivated. And the positive impact, the positive part of this is that after this operation, the number of traffickers arrested that were prosecuted is higher than the other years that we didn't associate the judges and the prosecutors. So that impacts a lot, and I think this is a practice that we need to encourage. We need to reinforce also the international cooperation, allowing and encouraging member countries to work together, to share information, to share data about the criminal in order to stop them to run away. The victims are suffering, and we definitely need to end up this impunity by working together. And when I talk about working together, it concerns even the national agencies. I am police officer from Benin, and I know that sometimes there is even a competition between the forces internally. While the criminals are running away, we are here competing for nothing. So we definitely need to reinforce, our cooperation internally, regionally, and internationally in order to effectively counter this heinous phenomenon. I would like also to mention one of the obstacles that sometimes that we face sometimes. It is the legal framework. This legal framework is an important issue because in some of the countries they don't have a specific legal framework on human trafficking. So all that they are doing is only based on the penal code, in the criminal law. So that is not enough. We definitely need to encourage each member countries, all the countries around the world, that this is a very serious crime that require a specific legal framework that will allow them to strengthen, the legal framework and the way to prosecute. Because when law enforcement don't have the tools, the legal tools to prosecute, they cannot do the job. So this legal framework needs to be raised up. And also, I mentioned the interagency cooperation already, harmonization of the legal framework, that is definitely something important, at least at a regional level. And also maybe I can also say that we can maybe recommend a revision, of the Palermo Protocol as well, and to adapt it a bit to the current challenges, because, with the rise of internet, the use of internet, and other type of challenges such as the cryptocurrencies, for instance, there is a lot of challenges that are posed now to law enforcement communities. We were not trained from the beginning to investigate online. So, but now the crime has shifted online. So we need to be equipped very well in order to continue providing the adequate support to the victim, and also continue identifying the traffickers and their network members online, because I'm sure that in 10 years, we will definitely have a lot to do online than physically in terms of human trafficking. Today, you can buy your passport online, you can buy your false visa online, you can get the flight ticket online. So things are getting easy for traffickers than for us law enforcement. So when it comes to sexual exploitation, this is a crime that really deserves an international cooperation. And I would like to ask all the members, countries, and the participants here to take advantage of the policy and capabilities that Interpol putting in place, that Interpol offers in order to effectively and in a very cooperative way combat this phenomenon. I will stand here waiting for some question, and thank you so much. If you allow me, I can continue till tomorrow, but I know that the time is running away. So thank you so much for your attention. I stand ready to provide any clarification if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Apovo Montero. It was a very good insight into the workings of the Interpol, as well as your own experiences that you've shared. And I liked some of the recommendations that you've already made in your speech relating to the exchange of information of offenders through the use of internet, so that worldwide awareness is there, identification of the offenders that way. And also that you have suggested a revision of the Palermo Protocol to meet the needs of the changing times, these current times, because as I always believe that trafficker is always ahead of the law. So so we have the prosecutors or the investigators or the law enforcers have to be also one step ahead of the criminals, the offenders. That's true. From that point of view, I think this proposal that you have suggested is definitely a very good recommendation that you've said here. And also the legal framework, some countries do have, at least in South Asia, we have special laws related to trafficking. We have special courts to try trafficking cases. but lack of evidence because Victim Protection Act is not there. They don't want to come forward. So anyway, thank you again very much for a very informative speech that you've given a presentation. I would like to call upon Mr. Bashir Garba Lado from Nigeria. We would like your valuable input. Mr. Bashir Garba.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Can you hear me? We can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm speaking on behalf of Senator Bashir Garba, the Director General of NAPTIP, who was to make this presentation, but unfortunately, an emergency came up in the office and he had to go to sort it out. So I'm speaking on his behalf this afternoon. First of all, I would like to say that human trafficking and sexual exploitation as part of organized crime have been criminalized by the Federal Republic of Nigeria through various legislations, which we use in dealing with all of this. The major legislation, as you may be aware, is the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition, Enforcement and Administration Act of 2015, which also established the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, the focal agency of Nigeria that coordinates all the laws and all the activities in the fight against human trafficking in Nigeria. This legislation, the Trafficking in Persons legislation, criminalized human trafficking and all other activities that have to do with trafficking in persons in various ways. We're talking about sexual exploitation, forced labor, begging, forced hawking, and every other thing that has to do with trafficking in persons. And this law also prohibits every activity, including the threats which human traffickers use, because you are aware that human traffickers use all manner of means to be able to take up their victims to where they exploit them. The Trafficking in Persons Act also defines sexual exploitation as the participation by a person in prostitution, sexual servitude, and the production of pornographic materials as a result of being subjected to a threat, coercion, and what have you. Now, talking about, because I don't want to talk much about human trafficking now because my colleagues there are already speaking, have already spoken so much about it. But I want us to also look at the issue of the criminal justice system so that we can be able to understand the situation that law enforcement and the other members of the criminal justice family are into. Now, the Nigerian criminal justice system gives its legal foundation through the Constitution. What that means is that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria gives the legal backing for the criminal justice system, most especially the portion which relates to the power of the courts or jurisdictional mandate of the courts. Sections of this Constitution, such as the fundamental rights, particularly the provision on rights of liberty, rights of fair hearing, and criminal justice. The state is using this power to convict a person who commits a crime of such, at the same time complies to respecting the criminal constitutional provisions on human rights. Apart from these constitutional provisions, the Nigerian legal system is divided into subsystems which comprise of laws in force, both at the federal level and the state levels. What I'm saying here is that in Nigeria, there are various forms of laws. There are those that deal with the federal issues. There are those that deal with just the local issues in the states. But the important thing to note here is that trafficking in person is one law. Trafficking in persons law is one that encompasses the entire country and is dealt with as a national law, because trafficking in person is treated as an organized crime, and as organized crime, it is at the federal level that it is dealt with. Now, the criminal administration of criminal justice in Nigeria is in nature, and it brings about different institutions, which include the judiciary, the police, the correctional service, and legal practitioners. Criminal justice is of different stages, which commence from when the police and other law enforcement agencies, which NAPTIP is one, has a reasonable suspicion that a person has either committed a crime or is committing a crime, then an arrest will occur. Then filing of the criminal charge and the bail of this individual. Then a trial commences, which continues with conviction through sentences, imprisonment, and release upon completion of sentence. I must say here that trafficking in person is very complex, like the other speakers have said, and to get a conviction in trafficking in person takes a whole lot, because it is expected that the victim must be available to give evidence of what has happened. And this is one of the challenges that we have always had in dealing with human trafficking and other crimes that are related, because the victim has to be there. In most cases, you discover that the victims are not even available. The suspect had been apprehended here, but sorry, the suspect had been apprehended, but the victim, for one reason or the other, including pressures from parents, are not being made available to the law enforcement officers to be able to take to court. And in most cases, this brings about these cases being lost by law enforcement agencies. Secondly, you will also discover that in most cases, you have some of these high flying cases whose traffickers are held up in various countries of the world, especially in Europe. And we are looking for how to get these people back here, but it's difficult to get these people back here because many of them have citizenship of those countries where they are, and some of the countries out there are finding it difficult to even share intelligence with us. They are finding it difficult to share data with us, and they hide under the data protection to be able to keep these people perpetually out there. Even the money, because in criminal investigation, it is important to follow the money, but unfortunately, some of these monies are held up out there and we cannot be able to trace them. What we end up catching here are some of the small fries, as it were, but we will continue to try our best. Now, what are the promising criminal justice practices in Nigeria? Because as we work on a daily basis and find some of these hurdles in dealing with this, the Federal Republic of Nigeria had to enact the Administration of Criminal Justice Act and also the Administration of Criminal Justice laws in the states, which has also now helped us to get certain things done faster than we used to have. And because of this, one of the things that we have been able to gain through these new things is the issue of video evidence and video conferencing. In the past, you cannot bring any video evidence in court. It is not admissible. But right now, with the Administration of Criminal Justice System, you can now bring any video evidence into the court, and then you must also now bring a victim into the court for justice to be heard or justice to be done. So through video evidencing, through video conferencing, you can also reach the victim, and then the court can hear the person. We also have the witness protection, because in the past, it was unheard that you go to court to begin to ask for how to protect a witness. But now with the ACJA, which is the Admission of Criminal Justice Act, now there are provisions for the witness to be protected. And this also goes with a lot of resources that are put in there to ensure that a victim and other witnesses that are coming for any case, that they are protected. We also look at the issue of expedited trial. Before now, expedited trial, because before now, trafficking cases were not given expedited trial because most of the judges will deal more with political cases. But right now, because of the work which NAPTIP has done with other agencies, we have now been able to get through the judges, through the judiciary, a situation where we get our trials done faster. And then the judges, especially the chief judges, now give practice direction to the judges of many of the courts to give priority to cases of trafficking. So, and that is one of the things that have helped us in recent times. I must also let you know that right now, what has also helped us, which is also a new practice we are bringing in, is the issue of the standard operating procedures that we have brought forward, which has made it easier for us not to waste so much time, because when a case now comes through the SOP that we have, we bring in the investigator, we bring in the counselors, as well as the prosecutors together to look at a case, interrogate a case as soon as it comes, to know how far we can go with it, so that instead of an investigator finishing and going to the prosecutor for them to now come up with their own opinion, you discover that with these three people coming together under a case team, the case is looked at expeditiously, and then the matter can now go for legal vetting, and it goes to court. So that has helped us a lot. Now, with that, we now have what we call the prosecution-led investigation, because it is no longer the investigation that is just dealing with it the way he likes. The prosecutor is also now there trying to lead what the investigator is doing, trying to tell the investigator what and what to look out for. And with that, it makes things a little bit easier. Now, it's also important that I mention here that the electronic recording of confessional statement have become a little much easier in the job we do, because we have discovered a situation where you bring in a victim, the victim talks to you right now, and in the next few weeks, because the victim has left your facility, the suspect, they have reached him or her, the relatives have reached him or her, and she is trying to change her statement. But now, with the electronic recording of confessional statement, a electronic recording of the statement of the victim, it becomes easier for us to take that to court and get a conviction, because it is showing there that, first of all, we did not maltreat the suspect that was arrested. We did not get any confessional statement out of duress, and that the victim that we have also spoken with, that we did not force the victim to give us the evidence. Now, all of this have also come with some challenges, because, like I said, it's a clandestine crime that we are fighting, and there are many things that have come to work also against all of this that we have done. Now, we talk about delay in criminal trials. Even though there are policy direction from the judges, we still experience a situation where cases of trafficking are still being delayed, just like cases of other criminal trials. Now, adequate funding, inadequacy of funds to cater for witnesses to come to court, because you have cases that are in court, you have witnesses that are scattered all over the whole place that are supposed to come to court. You need to look for funding And government cannot continue to spend so much money all the time in all of this. So because you don't have enough funding to be able to bring these people back down, you now end up maybe asking for adjournment of a case so that you can be ready to bring a witness to court. We also have fears of reprisal attacks because criminals, as you know, they are always all over the whole place. As you take in their victim, they are looking around, looking for how to get back this victim. And these victims, because of fear of the oath they have taken, the voodoo oath they have taken, they are afraid of coming up to talk. Because they are also afraid of reprisal attacks, they are finding it difficult to come to court. So this is one of the challenges that we also have. Now, the stigmatization from the public is also one other thing that we have as a challenge in dealing with trafficking in persons, especially the cases that have to deal with sexual exploitation. We have a society where somebody hears that this person was sexually abused. The next thing is to begin to look at that person as a prostitute. But we continue to enlighten the public that this person is not a prostitute, but forced into prostitution by criminals. So the issue of stigmatization is an issue which we continue to fight on a daily basis. Apovo also talked about the issue of interagency rivalry. We also have it in this area where everybody wants to be seen to be the one who has done this, the one who has done that. But we continue to fight this on a daily basis. And then we continue to also get further support based on what the National Security Advisor does, bringing everybody together all the time in the country. Now, we also have the problem of pressure from families, problems of pressure from families, religious organizations, communities, traditional heads, who some of these victims, some of these traffickers have been seen as good Samaritans in their places, instead of seeing them as the criminals. And some of these people now begin to put pressure on victims to ensure that they don't go to courts so that these people are not jailed, or so that these people do not come after them to kill them, because a trafficker whose victim is with us is looking for how to ensure that that case is ended. And that is why whenever we have these victims, we try to see how we can help them through various means, sending them to school, giving them skills acquisition and other things, and then keeping them away where the hands of the traffickers cannot reach them, so that they become better people in the society, that when you now want to reintegrate them, you reintegrate them into proper society. It may interest you to know that because of this kind of situation, we have trained many people in schools. We have 5 of the graduates, university graduates that we have trained, former victims, who have also been given employment into NAPTIP, who are working with us here now. And what we do with them too, apart from their normal work, is to also use them to talk to victims when victims come, so that victims will know that these people are talking from a position of authority. They have been there before. They do not want you to get there. So that if they don't believe some of us who have not been there, they will believe victims who have been there and talking to them from experience. I believe that what we need to do is to work together, both locally and internationally. All the law enforcement agencies working together, putting resources together, putting their hands together, we can now win this war. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Bashir Lado, for your input. I'm sure a lot of questions will be addressed to you, because as I'm moderating and I'm not putting in the questions, but a lot of questions are raised in my mind also, relating to your challenges, relating to your practices. And many of them are common to most countries of the world. globally, but many of them are, of course, some things we find that are absolutely identifiable with Nigeria. Of course, we agree that there have to be a cooperation amongst all bodies that are working against trafficking in persons and abolishing of prostitutions. One thing that we have very much in common is the internal infighting, the competition that both Mr. Montero said and you have said, and in Bangladesh also, the competition between agencies working for the same goal and the same aims, but wanting to come out as being the agency that has done it. So those are there also. So a great thanks to you. And I hope that the questions that we put to you will also be answered adequately. And we now move on to the next person. The next person is Mr. Petrescu. I think he's here from Romania.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we would leave the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone again. Allow me to tell that I'm glad that I participated in this event, because put me in the circumstances of learning, finding out about how many people are looking or even working on the issue of demand in relation with what is seen as a violence against human, being trafficking in person for sexual exploitation or prostitution, no matter how it is defined in different legislation or how it is formalized in a manner or other. I remember that years ago, when we started to look into the issue of demand as a way of closing more and more the circle against trafficking, we had as interlocutors only the EU Anti-Trafficking Coordinator Office in Brussels, Mrs. Miria Vasiliadou, and today is Mr. Olivier Onidi, and also joining us, it's the OSCE Special Representative, Mr. Valiant Ricci, which just last week was touching upon this issue and the importance of looking more and more on the dimension of demand in relation with sexual exploitation of women. Coming back to the topic of this panel, I would like to share of our Romanian, path, our Romanian way of developing promising practices in relation with judicial and criminal justice response against trafficking. And of course, being member of the EU, we make use of a lot of instruments available at the EU level in the context of Eurojust and Europol. And I will mention in here joint investigation teams, which are quite a very useful instrument in tackling transnational networks of traffickers and criminal organized groups that operate in several countries, involving victims from various other countries, not only from Romania or from the destination country. Also, I would like to mention Joint Action Day, an instrument provided by a platform provided by Europol, which gives us a very consistent tool in making prevention, if you want. In fact, at a certain time frame, all the European nations are developing various actions, being on the judicial side or being on the prevention side, simultaneously across European Union, which has a good, an important impact in prevention dimension of the fight against trafficking. The issue of clients, which was provided by the Palermo Protocol since quite a number of years, and also by the EU Directive Against Trafficking in Persons, was implemented in the Romanian legislation starting with 2014, and although it took maybe a couple of years till the first cases arose and were prosecuted. Currently, although we still at the beginning, we don't have not necessarily having high numbers of such cases investigated. In the past 2 years, the judicial authorities managed to investigate around 30 cases of the use of the services of a victim of trafficking or a sexual exploitation of a minor. 22 of them have been forwarded to court, and the number of 31 clients have been convicted, as I said, in the past 2 years. So it's a ground, it's a foundation for future development that we consider to be beneficial, and practice that will allow judicial to provide a more consistent and a more impactful response to traffickers and to trafficking in persons. Another practice that has quite a history in Romania, and hopefully we will be able to develop it further, it's what we call the victim coordination program during the criminal proceedings. It started as acknowledging the need of victim to navigate among the challenges of a judicial system, of a judicial process, that it's very often challenging even for professionals. So from administrative needs that this program responds for victim, like transportation or physical safety during their participation in the criminal proceedings, to what I believe it's the most important outcome of this program. It's the emotional support that we provide for victims in court, during the hearings, during the interviews, that allows them to become confident that the system is there and will do everything to support them in facing the reality of a criminal trial. Of course, all of these are good practices and with promising results, but that doesn't mean that we didn't recorded failures in prosecuting and incriminating trafficking. Therefore, while looking to what is happening, where we are wrong, following some empirical analysis, the answers that we came up to were, okay, victims are not cooperating, victims are not talking, are not testifying, or victims are lying. And that struck us. What is happening? Why this is happening? And we understood that we should look also into working with us in personal development as well as in professional development. And that's why we engage with the civil society representatives and developed a program for consolidation of judicial criminal justice system response towards trafficking in Romania. And together with them, we developed training programs and practices in the judicial system that are looking more in depth in the issue of trauma of victims. Understanding that trauma-informed should be for us the need to see the person in front of us and not the problem that we have in investigating trafficking in persons. Also, trainings will look in dealing with issues of internet and social networking that, although they are used for facilitating trafficking, they can be used also for criminal investigation of trafficking. And we are learning about Snapchat, Facebook, and TikTok. What traces can we use in documenting trafficking situation? Also, we are trying to build up, while debunking the myths regarding trafficking in persons and prostitution among the professionals that are working or are in the position of first responders for cases of trafficking, including immigration services, labor inspectors, and so on. We are aiming to all this effort to have the professional internalize a practice that will focus more on the relational interaction rather than the formal interaction with the victims of trafficking, because understanding trauma might be the answer to the question that we came up to while trying to improve ourselves in responding to trafficking. And that question, it's quite a simple one. How can I help? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Petrisca, for your valuable statements and regarding your practices and your trying to take over the challenges that you're facing with the victims I was quite impressed with the fact that you are giving emotional support to the victims, which is quite, I don't know how you do it, but it would be another topic. Maybe sometimes we could correspond with each other to find out how you give that emotional support during court proceedings to a victim, because normally this is the role of the NGOs to do that. And the government giving emotional support is quite unheard of, so it's quite an improvement. And also I like the way that you're saying you're going to use the internet not as a tool for exploiting or encouraging the trafficking, but actually, sorry, my thing had gone off, but actually the use of TikToks and the Snapchats and the other internets to control and to find out the traffickers or find out the victims, identify the victims. You're using the tool in the reverse way, which is also quite a good challenge that I thought that you had. And we think then you're saying that you're using the international treaties in your own local jurisdictions, international conventions on the organized crime, the Panama Protocol, CEDAW, and the other organizations that deal with trafficking, other conventions or treaties or regional treaties, agreements that you have between against trafficking in persons. And you're using that also in the as evidence in the courts of law is also good practice, I think. So having said all this, and having heard all the great eminent speakers, I can't say one is less than the other. Each one has had so much experience and has talked so well about it. I would say that I feel that we have gained a lot, and we can also sum up that. And I like the way that you're saying that you're also going to review the Panama Protocol. That's also something. So now I would like to open the panel to the audience, to the viewers, to the participants, anybody who wants to who have questioned us or have questions that the speakers could respond to. I'm sure you have already put the questions in the question and answer there.
Excuse me, dear former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking. I have to speak about. I am also another panelist.
You are, please introduce yourself.
I am José Luis Pérez Fernández from Spain, from Policía Nacional.
Are you a speaker too? Did I leave you out?
I am the last one.
Oh, I'm so sorry then. I apologize very sincerely. So your name is?
José Luis Pérez Fernández.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Fernandez. I'm very, very sorry. I overlooked it. Okay, so please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad that you intervened.
Dear former UN Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for the invitation. It is an honor, a huge honor, not only for me, for my institution and for my country, to be here today in that event. The title of our panel is Addressing Organized Crime in the Context of Human Trafficking and Sexual Exploitation, Promising Criminal Justice Practices. I will divide my presentation into the following areas, trying to be at all times very practical and very realistic, and trying to share with you how we work in Policía Nacional in that crime area. First, promising criminal justice system specialization. Second, promising criminal justice system, proactive investigation, victim-centered approach. Third, promising criminal justice system, international cooperation. And last but not least, promising criminal justice system. I will share a question with all of you. How can we help the victims of human trafficking? First, specialization. We are all tired of always hearing the word specialization in the fight against human trafficking. But this specialization is absolutely essential to build an effective fight against that crime. The specialization of all the actors involved in the fight against THV is essential and must be provided in two aspects. First, in human rights and gender perspective, and gender equality. Second, not all police officers can detect, identify, and hear a victim of trafficking of human beings. A specialization by nationalities is required. A correct and deep knowledge of their language, their geopolitical situation, of the particular idiosyncrasy of the country allows a better approximation to the victims of trafficking of human beings. We have to make it easier for the victims, for survivors. We have to make it easier that a victim or a survivor will cooperate with the criminal justice system. The Central Brigade Against Trafficking of Human Beings in Spain in Policía Nacional is made up by groups specialized by nationalities. Thus, we have groups specialized in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in Africa, and in Asia. Also, we have groups specialized in cyber trafficking and in labor exploitation. A specialization by nationalities, from our point of view, has several advantages, such as in-depth knowledge of the culture of each nationality and therefore a greater understanding of the particularities of each society, better knowledge of the forms of recruitment, migratory routes, elements of coercion, threats, and exploitation, better victim-centered approach, easier contact with the specialized police in the country of origin and transit countries, and also continuous work with the same mediators, the same NGOs, and the same interpreters of that nationality. These groups are responsible in Policía Nacional for leading investigation of criminal organization, not only at national level, much more at international level, as well as we work really in a really close way with third countries. Likewise, in each province, in each city in Spain, we have a police team specialized in fight against trafficking of human beings. Also, there are two figures that we think that it's really, really important. We have a national mediator against THV. It's a police officer who is daily in contact with the main NGOs specialized in the fight against trafficking of human beings and in the assistance and protection of victims of trafficking of human beings. Also, in each city, we have one person in our in Policía Nacional who is in contact with the main NGOs. And also at central level, we have a liaison officer in the state prosecution office, that is myself. And my goal is increase the effectiveness of the cooperation between both institutions. Also at province level, in each city, we have a liaison officer with the state prosecution office. We have to be aware that if a victim of a human trafficking has the feeling that she is not understood, that we cannot provide her any kind of solution, that she will remain in her situation of exploitation and we will not have help anybody. Second, proactive investigations. We are based on the existence of multidisciplinary problems in which geopolitical, migratory, economic, gender, and organized crime problems converge. As a specialized police, we have to build proactive investigation that allow us to gather evidence and clues to bring traffickers in front of the justice, as well as to protect and assist victims. I insist, the challenge is to build proactive cases, not reactive ones that are initiated as a result of a victim's statement. Police and judicial investigations should not rely entirely on the statement of a victim from the very beginning. We must be able to build solid cases independently from the victim. And once we have developed the action date, search warrant, and arrested criminal the traffickers, and the victim is aware that we have arrested her traffickers, and that we know her story, and that we know her suffering, but that we are here as a police officer to help the victims, believe me, at that moment, it will be much easier for the victim to cooperate with the criminal justice system, always following a trauma-informed approach. Third, international cooperation. We, as Policía Nacional, usually have PhD cases with a strong cooperation with third countries. We, as Policía Nacional, strongly believe in international cooperation. Just an example, in the last 2 months, April, May 2021, we have carried out joint investigation with the following countries. Peñarol case with among Interpol, Spain, and Uruguay, Crafter case among Europol, Spain, Romania, Italy, Greece, Croatia, Serbia, and Montpellier case among Europol, Spain, Romania. But of course, international police cooperation, it is not easy. No one said it had to be easy. But the victim deserves justice, and they should demand justice. Then we cannot be satisfied with releasing a victim and arresting in our country the traffickers directly involved in her exploitation. We, as police officers in the 21st century, as members of the criminal justice system in the 21st century, as actors involved in the fight against trafficking of human beings in the 21st century, must offer comprehensive solutions. Without effective international cooperation, there is no solution. International cooperation should be a pending subject for all countries, for all justice systems, for all police officers, countries of origin, transit, and destination, multitude of countries, just one single criminal network, just one single court case. Then we have to implement the cooperation with countries of origin. We must not forget that the survivor is not the only victim of the criminal organization. The relative of the victims to whom they are threatened, coerced, intimidated, assaulted are victims of the same criminal organization. Cooperation with countries of transit. Generally, the criminal organizations specialized in THC use criminal organizations specialized in smuggling, human smuggling. Please, we must not forget the suffering, the fear, the dangers of the migratory route to which the victims are subject. They are raped, they are assaulted, they are sold, they are exploited. Cooperation between third countries. We must come closer together to achieve international recognition of the status of victim of trafficking of human beings, as well as his or her rights. However, it is really difficult to list the main difficulties found in international cooperation because it depends in multiple factors, but we have to try to do our best. Fourth, last but not least, I will share a question with all of you. How can we help the victims of human trafficking? It seems simple, but it is simple now, by not being complicit of their exploitation, by not allowing their exploitation to continue. During these 10 years that I have worked in the field of trafficking of human beings, I have seen how many Nigerian women, barely 18 years old, always wearing the same clothes, not interacting with other people, not speaking Spanish, working in prostitution during long hours at dawn, at minus 15 degrees, or at 14 degrees in summer. I have had the great pleasure of seeing how many of these women, when Policía Nacional have arrested traffickers, that I have seen how this survivor has a smile, the smile of freedom and the beginning of the return of their dignity. But believe me, I also have seen a lot of suffering. I have also seen during these 10 years how many men from different African countries work very long working days, living subhuman conditions, ate only once a day. I've seen how many of them have told me that they have idealized Europe, that they wanted to go back to their country. I have had the great pleasure also of seeing how many of these men, when we have arrested traffickers, have seen the dignity that had taken away from them return. But equally, I have also seen a lot of suffering. In every meeting I take part, I emphasize the need to work together, to be part of a multidisciplinary team, to give a voice to the civil society. to give the voice to the society in general. We have to fight against trafficking of human beings altogether, sharing the information, making easier for the victims to cooperate with the criminal justice system. Society must be aware of its responsibility and of its silence. Without clients, there is no trafficking. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Because you're very positive in your approach, which is a very good thing to see, because you're stressing on the international cooperation relating to trafficking in persons, and also that you also are a very, I would say, a humane person, in the sense that you're talking not only of the victims, but you're talking of the victims' families that are involved, and you're always talking about the regional cooperation and the international cooperation and the third world countries' cooperation. I think the way you have put the promising criminal justice system in place in Spain, which is also a country not only is having a big, is a receiving country, it's a host country, because we find that most of the people from the third world countries are coming into your country, coming to Spain, either through the waters of the Mediterranean or the land they're trying to push in. We have a lot of cases of mishaps happening to these poor traffickers. You also, whilst you're talking of the traffickers within your country, the victims within your country, but I don't know whether you would also be thinking about the ones who are prospective migrants into your country, who are coming through irregular mechanisms or coming through dubious routes, being sold into prostitution from the North African borders into Spain. So I think it was, again, I apologize for my inadvertent mistake, because I was taking notes, so I didn't look at the paper. I was listening to everybody's traditions and practices and challenges, and which is why I was not looking into the paper and I forgot to call you in. But I think because I forgot to call you in, I listened to you more carefully. And because I listened to you more carefully, I can understand that it's very unique for a government officer to be so human in his approach to combating trafficking in persons. Thank you once again. I thank all the speakers who have given their inputs and talked about the challenges as well as the good practices of their own countries. And one thing that came out of all this is the cooperation is coordination, and cooperation is a very essential part if you really want to get rid of it. There was one particular point that was raised also about reintegration and rehabilitation of the victims, like giving them compensation, giving them alternative accommodations, creating exit points, which I think is again very, very, and addressing the demand section. And I have a few questions raised by the viewers, participants, and the audience. There's a question to Mr. Sporer. I hope you're there, Mr. Sporer. What do you think about the Nordic model for Germany? Mr. Sporer, are you there? Mr. Henry,
Ich höre Sie. Verstehen Sie mich?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Verstehen Sie mich?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah, I could hear you then.
Prima.
Great.
Das nordische Modell.
The Nordic model has a completely different approach than the model that is pursued in Germany and in other Middle European countries. For quite a while, I have tried to change the situation in Germany by using conventional means. In 2016, 2017, there was the last major amendment, a law for the protection of prostitutes. However, it did not live up to our expectations, and the situation in Germany has not changed. And I have come to the conclusion that the Nordic model, no matter whether we're talking about this genuine model or modified model is the best solution to reduce the suffering and the injustice and inequality. In Germany, there is a strategic minority, even in the German parliament, that is in favor of introducing the Nordic model. I believe, and this is what I've already mentioned, that there is a quantity problem. Reducing brothels means reducing the number of victims. And if you use the Nordic model, all brothels would be banned. Of course, some prostitution would remain and also human trafficking, but this applies to theft or rape too, even though it is forbidden. But if you ban this as a standard, then you will reduce the suffering. Often people say, well, if we put a ban on prostitution, then there will be a lot of covered prostitution. But I don't think this is true. Prostitution needs a certain publicity because customers would need to know where they can find the women they want to pay and use. And if the sex buyers are able to do this, then the police would be able to do this too. And then using the Nordic model means the market would be smaller. And that's why I think it would be a good idea to introduce the Nordic model in Germany.
Thank you so much. And I would like to thank Madame Sigma Huda. And regretfully, we will not be able to continue with the question because we have significantly ran out of time. So thank you so much, Madame Huda. Your moderation was greatly appreciated. And we look forward to having you at our events again. I also wanted to once again apologize to Mr. Jose Luis Perez Fernandez for the inadvertent error that has occurred. We always appreciate your participation and remarks at many of the OSCE-ODIHR events. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to move the program to the closing remarks. And
Tatiana, could I just intervene here? There are about 3 or 4 questions more, so maybe you could look into it and you can address it directly.
We will address those directly, Madame Huda. We need to move on with the program. Thank you very much. And now I would like to move on with the closing remarks and invite Ms. Gabrielle Baumann, head of the Swedish branch, Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Ms. Gabrielle Baumann is the head of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Nordic Countries Project based in Sweden, Stockholm. And it's her 3rd stationing in Europe after St. Petersburg and most recently from 2012 to 2019 in Kiev. In Berlin, Ms. Baumann was responsible for Central and Eastern Europe from 2005 to 2008 and was then the head of the domestic policy program team at CAS Berlin. Ms. Baumann, the screen is yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Tatiana Kotlerenko. And I'm so sorry that we had to interrupt the interesting discussion I was also listening to during the last 2 hours. But time is, of course, going on. And I would like to say a couple of concluding words, but not so long because I know everybody's already tired in the evening. But I would like to say that, of course, for us, it has been, for us, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung has been a great honor to be co-organizer of this event and to address the conference with a study about the Nordic perspective on prostitution and human trafficking. The study was done and we heard about it yesterday. In the evening panel by Stamba Vandiko Atasök, and it's now online on our website and has been already shared by many other persons. So there you can get additional information about the so-called Nordic model. And interesting, just right now, Helmut Spohr spoke about it. It could be also a model for for Germany, of course. That's so interesting because the Nordic model has been established, as it was said yesterday, in Sweden in 1999, and since then it has been adopted by 7 other countries. It describes, among others, in detail the exit strategies for prostitutes we also spoke about during this panel, and also how to discourage the demand for paid sexual services. In Sweden, the prostitution has been decreased by 85% after this model was included after 2000. So this is in contrast, as we have heard, to the situation in Germany in particular. And I think it's very, very interesting to hear that now there has been adopted a law on the penalty for sex buyers, and it's also now a part of the election program of the Christian Democratic Union, the party who has studied the Nordic model carefully, and the model which is predicated on equality. So great news, I think, for Germany, that it is going forward, and the Nordic model is worth also to take into consideration. I think it is fantastic that this conference could contribute to understand the contrasting positions within the country, and also to show policy solutions. This is what is one of our goals, also to show policy solutions with the facts we get through studies and expert talks. Just to say a few words about us, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung established an office in Stockholm 2 years ago, and we want to strengthen the ties between the Nordic countries and Germany. This topic of today, yesterday, this has been new to us, but it shows how the Nordic countries can give many important examples, like based on good governance, on equality in society, being also economically innovative and sustainable. So there's a lot, just to put it more general, there's a lot we can learn from each other. Germany can learn from Sweden, from Norway, and Sweden can learn, of course, from Germany. But therefore, it is so important that we have discussions like this one to share our experiences. And I think it's also a chance that we have to bring forward our common policy within the European Union. So we will happy to contribute to the conference, which will take place next year, 2022, as well. It will be a great honor. It's a very important topic now for us, and it's really good, as I said, to share this experience. I would like to conclude by saying that today in Sweden, there's a public holiday. It's midsummer. So everybody is now out with family and friends to celebrate the light. And it's just stopped raining in Stockholm. So I'm also looking forward a bit to celebrate myself. And I wish you everybody a nice evening, and how we'll said in Swedish, glad midsommar.
Thank you so much, Ms. Baumann. And now I would like to speak on, to provide closing remarks on behalf of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Now more than ever, we need to focus on the gendered experiences of girls and women and put them at the center of any discussion on trafficking in human beings. The speakers of this conference, through their work, demonstrate that real change is possible, and the fight against all forms of gender-based violence, and especially trafficking of women and girls, will continue and gain more momentum through this conference. Your words and work has inspired women and girls around the world to not just dream of equality and a life free from abuse and violence, but to mobilize and work together to make it a reality. Sheryl Sandberg said, that we must raise both the ceiling and the floor. In order to do so impactfully and effectively, feminist leaders and their male allies, such as yourselves, are playing a crucial role in paving the way and demonstrating to the last girl, as Ruchira Gupta actually coined, in the most remote location and the direst of circumstances, that she's not alone and that change is possible and is coming. We heard 4 incredible feminist superheroes speaking at the conference, survivor leaders and members of the OSCE-Büro International Survivors of Trafficking Advisory Council, who through their lived experiences, courage, and commitment to eradicate all forms of sexual exploitation and trafficking in human beings, are in the front line of this change. Chandra Vovaruntu is daily in the front lines in US, responding to new cases and supporting victims and survivors through the provision of food, sheltered accommodation, and other urgent needs, including during the COVID-19 pandemic. Chandra called on us for the global action, local action, and individual action, which will enable us to end sex trafficking once and for all. You must implement all those legislations that exist to promote human dignity and especially women, girls, children rights to the very end, she said during the conference. Diane Martin is advocating and lobbying for the equality model in Scotland and around the world. She reminded us that prostitution is about trapping women and children in an exploitative system in which they cannot see an escape. We must understand, she said, that prostitution and sex trafficking are the same thing. This is not an intellectual exercise, but it is real harm to women and children. Sandra Nurak, who's fighting to change legislation in Germany to address demand for trafficking of women in the sex industry, she educated us on the need to understand that relations between victims and traffickers can involve trauma bonding and romantic relationships. Psychological bond between victims and the person who abuses them is a key piece to address. And to be aware of this can facilitate identification of victims. Malaiko Oringo continues to support undocumented African survivors of trafficking and prostitution in the Netherlands. She highlighted that survivors have not been adequately recognized for their efforts, and that survivor-led initiative should be acknowledged and supported. To conclude, I would like to thank the co-organizers, Konrad Adenauer Foundation and Together Against Trafficking, as well as the ODIHR incredible team supporting this event, Maximilian Scheid, Maria Kuchma, and Matteo Polizzi. I'd like to thank the interpreters and leave you with the following quote by one of my icon heroes, Gloria Steinem, who said, "When unique voices are united in a common cause, they make history." And I believe we are here to make history. I would like to thank every participant of this conference for making history here with us in the last 2 days of the conference, as your support is crucial in ensuring that the next generation of girls can live their lives without the threat of trafficking and sexual exploitation. Finally, for those who'd like to watch the event again or share the recording with others, the recording of this event will be shared with all of the participants and will be available in the co-organizer's social media. We also look forward to sharing a post-conference report with you. With that, I would like to introduce the last closing remarks of the day from a very incredible woman who has really driven the process of this conference now for a number of years, Ms. Angelica Frank, who is the Executive Director of Together Against Trafficking, and I will not try to pronounce it in German, and I will learn for next year. Ms. Angelica Frank has been the Executive Director of Together Against Trafficking since June 2018. Prior to that, she gained experience as a social worker in the field of street work and outreach work in brothels in Berlin, and was involved in the establishment of a shelter as a member of a founding team. She completed her studies in governance and human rights with a master's thesis on victims, witnesses, and criminal proceedings related to human trafficking. Ms. Frank, the floor is yours.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, good evening from Berlin. As this great conference is coming to an end, I would also express my sincere thanks to our co-organizers, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, who has been our strong partner since our very first conference in 2016. And also OSCE, and particularly Tatiana Kotliarenko, who has helped me very much with the organization of this conference and who is very much involved. We have reached a wide international audience, and our speakers comprise political leaders, international organizations, survivor leaders, academics, experts, and civil society. What a powerful event. We are very pleased with the great international interest the conference has received, especially on an issue of such relevance in Germany. Ms. Wiedmann-Mautz, the German Minister of State and Chairwoman of the Women's Union, on whose behalf she spoke yesterday, stated in her speech that the pandemic has revealed that our German laws are not effective in combating human trafficking and all forms of sexual exploitation. German approach to prostitution is shaped by the fact that prostitution has been regarded as a regular profession. As a result, Germany has made efforts to strengthen the legal status of persons in prostitution and to regulate prostitution. However, as she stated, in spite of all the regulations, we have not been able to curb violence and human trafficking. It is still here. The vast majority of women in prostitution, it is a highly gendered phenomenon. That's why I speak about women in prostitution, do not engage in this activity voluntarily, but out of poverty and coercion. This was also acknowledged by and stressed by by Helmut Sporer today. This is also the view of the German Alliance Together Against Human Trafficking, composed of almost 40 member civil society organizations. Currently, strategy for combating trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation and its interlinkage with prostitution are being rediscussed in Germany. Also, legislative approaches regulating prostitution and the sex industry are being reconsidered, which we very much appreciate. As human trafficking and all forms of sexual exploitation are a global phenomenon, which all the countries are confronted with, this conference was intended to create a platform for effective exchange of information, promising practices and lessons learned on the ongoing and future activities in the field of combating human trafficking and all forms of sexual exploitation. At this point, I would like to thank the international community for supporting the work in Germany to prevent and address these problems more effectively. We are thankful for each speaker at this conference, as you have shared your knowledge and experiences, giving us deep insights and increasing our understanding of the topics. But in particular, I would like to thank the survivor leaders. You shared your story with us, which is something very personal. While I am talking about what happened to others when addressing this issue and try to understand the trauma and horror they are going through, you have been talking about your own lives. I would like to thank you for your courage to stand up out of the deepest pain and trauma and not to be afraid to take a public stand against the serious violations of human dignity and human rights. This means a lot to us. Therefore, your statements carry special weight and should inform all efforts and approaches to properly deal with this issue. They should have a major impact on how we frame phenomena such as prostitution. Chandra Gogoruntu, for example, emphasized that we cannot talk about trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation without also talking about prostitution, as the two are closely intertwined. She clearly rejected the notion of prostitution being a profession, stating that prostitution is not a profession, but a form of oppression. This was reiterated by Diane Martin, who took a stand against the assumption that one can simply get out of prostitution. She emphasized that prostitution is about trapping women in an exploitative system in which they cannot see an escape. Also in Sandra Norak, she spoke about trauma bonding, which is a psychological response to abuse. It requires mental reprogramming to break such bonds. This, by the way, is also crucial information for judges, for instance, who in trafficking-related trials on a regular basis have to deal with the question, why didn't she leave? So these views are crucial to really inform our exit strategies, as Malaika Oringo stated. Many key topics and approaches were shared during this conference. I don't want to repeat them all. We are really running out of time. And still some important issues could only be mentioned in passing, such as the importance of national referral mechanisms. By the way, Germany still doesn't have one. Or the important role that pornography also plays in this whole issue. Therefore, we would like to take the opportunity to invite you to our next conference, which will take place next year in Berlin. We are very pleased to announce that we are committed to organize this conference and that we have already started to pull the threads together. It will be another impactful and groundbreaking event, and we would love to have you in our midst. As I now close this conference, I would like to thank you for your participation in this conference and say goodbye with the words, after the conference is before the conference. I look forward to our cooperation and to seeing you next year. Goodbye.